Now, I didn't want to make a video about Joker 2 because the movie, in my opinion, was so bad it didn't even deserve to have a video about how bad this movie is. But a lot of articles have since been written about the failures of it and what's Todd Phillips and the cast have been saying, and it's just, in my opinion, it feels like it's getting a lot worse finding these revelations out. But I went ahead and decided to go ahead and talk about it. I did stream my review of this on my Twitch channel, but in the end, I'm not going to spoil anything in the movie, but the movie truly was unnecessary in the end. It really was. And then the more they talk, or the more these articles are coming out, it's evident that they didn't even want to make the movie. It feels like. So I got the box office numbers here, which were way lower than expected, even lower than the expectation of the estimates. They had it domestically at around 40 million even, wound up coming in at 37.6 million for the opening. Yeah, 39 is with the Monday added now that it's Tuesday. 37.6 domestic opening, way below the 40 million. And mind you, the original estimates that were still flop numbers was between 50 and 65 million, and didn't even come close to that. The international, they thought it was going to be 80 something million. They wanted coming in at 70 something. Worldwide so far, 116 million on a 200 million budget. Estimates have it now at around, when all the markets open, probably a 250 million max altogether. I don't think domestically it has a shot to ever to hit 100 million. And when you consider that the original Joker opened domestically at 96 million around the same time, it was this is just beyond flop at this point. This was a lower opening than Morbius. There's articles that are out there talking about that. Morbius opened at 39 million, and this one opened at 37. So, just to give you perspective of how bad this movie is performing. Now, the CineScore was a D, lower than Madam Web. There were a lot against this film, but the reason why it was more shocking is that means that there was enough people on Friday saying how bad it was that it affected Saturday and Sunday even more so than what they were estimating. People just weren't going to the theaters to watch this in the end. Now, what happened to the movie basically? Why is it so bad, right? A lot of people want to know what makes this movie so horrendous. Well, I've always thought that the moment they mentioned that it might be a musical, in my opinion, was already set up to fail. When you actually watch the film, then you realize they didn't even go all the way with the musical part, and it messed with the flow of the movie, the pacing, everything about that musical part of it was off. It was almost like, I guess the way to say it in musical, it was off key because there were parts where shouldn't have been the musical numbers, and then there was part in the musical that it was too short. I don't know how to explain it unless you actually watch it, but when you watch a musical, like let's say La La Land or Chicago, or heck, even that new movie that came out not too long ago, what's it called, the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory guy, Wonka musical. When you take a certain number, right, and it kind of sets up the scene, and you're singing it, and it's still basically telling the story through music. You didn't really get that here with Joker. It felt like the musical part of it were unnecessary to push the plot or describe the scene. And there was one part, especially towards the end of the film, which had me laughing because it was showing Arthur basically, or Joker, or actually it will be Arthur, trying to tell Gaga to like, no, don't sing right here. So it was almost like a fourth wall, basically the audience basically saying, please stop because it's not working right here. Like I said, there was just the pacing with it was just bad. And then on top of that, since they weren't committed to a full musical, It was kind of half-assed. It didn't work out. It just flat out didn't. It really made the pacing just way off. On top of that, the story was not benefiting from the musical numbers that a real musical would have. The scenes weren't set up correctly. The songs were not memorable like musicals. I mean, like, you know, some other musicals. You've really found yourself like, okay, stop. I know that there's probably some people that enjoy musicals and things like that, but when they announced a comic book movie to be a musical, like, to me, that's just telling your audience, hey, we know you guys are not like musical fans, but we want you to adapt to our idea here. And in my opinion, that was already set up to fail. And in the practice of it, or the actual implication of the musical part of it, like I said earlier, just did not work. And I think that the audience watching this, knowing that they're not a musical, you know, they don't have a musical palette for this kind of stuff. They're not, you know, pros or anything like that. You might have some that have watched all these musicals and love it, but the idea that they're going to be used to this and that they're just going to have to accept it and love it whenever it comes out, it was a tall order. It really was. That was a very tall order, and it failed spectacularly, in my opinion. I think that was one of the biggest contributions of why this movie had a lot of people turn off in the beginning. Then you find out the story that they wrote, and the story is another thing that it was just not good at all. It was very boring. It's almost like they wanted to take a film that was here, running time right there, you can see it, 2 hours and 18 minutes. They really only had a 40 minute plot, and they needed to extend it unnecessarily because they didn't know what to do. And they were so worried about how to fill this time that they decided basically to remake the first movie in form of rehashing all the stuff that happened through the court drama of the film. That's basically what the plot is. You have the title here, Folie à Deux, basically meaning, you know, dual identity, and that's basically what this is Arthur Fleck struggling to be Joker because of what's happening with Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn is a character that they introduced. By the way, I do want to flat out say that Joker's performance and Harley Quinn's performance, right? So Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga, they did their part. They did their thing. They were not the problems of the film, or the characters themselves weren't the problems of the film. They were actually the most enjoyable parts of the film. The cinematography was the same as the first Joker, so obviously that was also very well. I feel like it was a movie that you really wanted it to be good because you were so in love with the first movie. I mean, heck, the first movie made $1 billion total. It was 330 something million domestically, 700 million internationally, and I mean, people enjoyed it. And then you hear these articles come out talking about how, I don't know why people enjoyed it. You were supposed to hate it and all this kind of stuff. I've seen a lot of that going on, and it's like, what are we talking about here? The villain, the comic book villain, as popular as Joker, you're gonna be surprised that people liked him. You're gonna be like, it's like saying that you're gonna be surprised that people like Thanos, and that's why they're saying Thanos is right. That The Sopranos. We know the main character, Tony Soprano, is supposed to be a bad guy, and you're probably not supposed to like him. But guess what? Everybody loved Tony Soprano. I mean, that's why they made 7 seasons of the show. It was a success, and you shouldn't be mad at people for liking The Enemy if that's what you really wanted it to be. I mean, that's the point of making a film titled The Joker. You're gonna expect people to like the Joker in the end. I mean, what are we doing here? So I don't like those takes going around talking about how that we were supposed to hate him. But there seems to be some validity to that, because a lot of articles are coming out saying how the fans didn't get it and da-da-da, and it's like, well, I'm sorry, we're sorry that we liked the Joker all these years. Back to the film. Yeah, like the story, the plot was just not enough. It was very, the pacing, I mean, I really don't want to say much without spoiling, because everything is basically a spoiler in this thing. But I will say this, though, because this article came out, we're just going to talk about this article specifically here. Todd Phillips says Joaquin Phoenix was never actually the Joker. He's always been Arthur Fleck. He's never been this thing that's been put upon him, this idea that Gotham people put on him, that he represents. He's an unwitting icon. Now, again, I think this goes back to that point that I was making about the first film, that you weren't ever supposed to like Joker. You signed up to be the director for a comic book movie, Joker. If you don't like Joker and you don't want it to be the Joker, why in the world are you doing these projects? Why? I mean, at this point, if you really were hell bent on making this a one and done, and you were disappointed with the way it worked out, right? Give somebody else the keys. Because if this is not a project you liked, why would you destroy it the way you did? Just to get back at people to say he's not the Joker. I really hated this part of the movie. Basically, this is the ending. I'm not gonna spoil what happens, but the revelations there. The scene was set up in the courthouse, and also actually the jail cell and the shower scene too. But Arthur realizes that he's not the Joker. That essentially makes it to where other people don't like him, and it pretty much ends the film in a way that I think on paper they thought was going to be good, and it fell flat as well. The ending, in my opinion, I think a lot of people that also didn't like the movie, I think they felt like there was a big waste of time because there was no really payoff at the end of the film, and that is exactly the case. If you have heard about the ending, it's even worse when you watch it because, in my opinion, they executed it so poorly. The ending was not executed correctly at all. I understand why they wanted to do everything. So for those people that want to come in here and be like, oh, you just don't get it, you just don't get it. I do. I'm just trying not to spoil the movie for everybody else here. The problem was it was not implemented correctly. This is the only part of the cinematography where I would agree that it did not work. It failed because you wanted to focus in on something that was happening, and then you were supposed to pay attention in the background. And it just didn't have the same effect as it would be as if you would just be right out front with it. This ending was just terribly executed in the end, period. The movie was terribly executed. The direction was terribly executed. You have Joaquin Phoenix now, and this is the part I'm talking about where everything is coming out now, revealed in report. Morning stars blame Todd Phillips. You find out that Joaquin Phoenix had a dream that it was going to be, musical and stuff like this, and that they went this direction. He had too much power because of how much money the movie made the first time, and everything is coming out now that it's failed. I wonder if all these articles would come out if it was a success, right? Would all this stuff be hidden and stuff like that? I think it's easier to start pointing the finger whenever something is not as successful as you thought it would be, because I wonder if any of this comes out, if it was, let's say it made 120 million at the box office domestically opening weekend and 200 million overseas, and everybody loved it. The overseas numbers, in my opinion, are a little shocking as well, because I know we have a tendency to go ahead and over exaggerate when something is bad, right? We like to really hammer it down and say, no, this is the worst thing that's ever happened and all this stuff. But I'm kind of shocked that the international numbers are also reflecting it. That means they also had that same kind of opinion. They didn't like it. So it's not just us. And this is also the first time I've seen, when we looked at the Rotten Tomato numbers, where the critic score and the audience score are pretty much in agreement that they did not like this movie. Now, you have people out there on Twitter right now defending it tooth and nail, talking about how it's a masterpiece. I do not see a masterpiece. There is no masterpiece in this. I do notice one thing, though. The people that are saying it's a masterpiece, they happen to be big Lady Gaga fans. And like I said, her performance was great. I'm not taking her performance away at all. And I think they're afraid to put a negative mark on her film because she's part of it. That's how I feel. That's how I interpret a lot of those super fans that are coming out in defense of it. But the reality of the situation is this: it's not her fault. It's not Joaquin Phoenix's fault, even if it was a dream to be in the musical. I blame WB the most for not reeling him in, Todd Phillips. Apparently he didn't want anything to do with DC. He didn't want to take any notes. Right here, it says right here, ignore notes from James Gunn, Peter Safran. He wanted little to do with DC, and he wanted to make this movie on his own. And that right there was a big mistake, because you gave this guy a $200 million check to do whatever he wants, and what he made just was not good at all. It just wasn't. And I think a lot of people, me included, we had hope that it was going to be good. It just was not. So that is Joker 2. You guys let me know what you think in the comment section below. Did you enjoy the film? Am I crazy for thinking this movie was bad? Like I said, I thought it was terrible. It was a terrible movie. The plot was bad. Some of the scenes were unnecessary. The movie felt unnecessary in the end. They should never have made a sequel. And now that we have the sequel, this should be buried alive. WB, how they were killing all these other projects, right? Like the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote, the Batgirl. You know, they're not afraid to cut stuff that they already made in hopes that it doesn't make it doesn't flop. Well, they let this one go. This one should have been one of those like they scrap right away. If they do make another sequel and make another Joker sequel, they need to make it to where this was all just part of a dream, or maybe this was all part of the Folie Duo. You know, maybe this never happened. This was all in his head, and then the opening scene of Joker 3 is him waking up from that nightmare. Because right now, the only thing that was the joke about all this was the audience, us, for watching this garbage. It was just bad. All right, I'm out.